Hey guys, today we'll be looking at this 12 volt 100 amp hour lithium iron phosphate battery from KingBoss. I purchased this about 4 months ago and it's been sitting in the box since. I paid $77. It was a sale that was being run on Amazon with a one-time use coupon code at the time. It was just too good of a deal to pass up. But was it a good choice? This battery is very similar to pretty much all of the 100 amp hours we have reviewed. It's the same plastic case, the same dimensions, the same carry handle. Taking a look at the manual, one thing I noticed right away is that the brand name KingBoss is not mentioned anywhere in this manual. Swally Technology Company is mentioned several times throughout this manual. It does say here under battery configuration that this should have EVE cells in here. It's got a BMS part number there and connector. It has connectors. I hope it has connectors. How else are you going to use the battery? We've got our BMS protection parameters here. I did notice the over discharge voltage is 2.3 volts per cell. That is a little bit lower than we typically see. And I also noticed that this is listed as having low temperature charging protection. It should kick in at 0 degrees Celsius plus or minus 5 degrees, so that's right around freezing. According to the assembly drawing, this should have some fairly interesting, it's not the traditional type cell, it looks more like a blade style. For the capacity testing, I use my American Reliance electronic load. This allows for a very accurate constant current discharge test. And I actually ran 2 capacity tests. The first capacity test came in at 88.6 amp hours. Now, that is quite a bit out of spec, and whenever I get an unusual result like this, I typically run a second test just to make sure it's not the result of a mistake or an error on my part. So I ran a second capacity test and that came back at 88.9 amp hours. And that's fairly consistent with the first result, which is not good. Alright, so the very first thing I noticed as soon as this lid popped off is that this BMS is not even held down. It is literally just floating around inside this case. Alright, so as I'm looking at this now, I'm seeing there was a piece of foam on the top here, and there's a piece of foam on the side that sort of fell off. So I guess these 2 pieces were pressing this BMS down against the top of the case, but that is still not an acceptable way to mount this in my opinion. Oh, no way. They're cylindrical cells. Look at that. These are cylindrical cells. They are nothing like that picture that was in the manual. What is this? Look at that. There's cells even missing. They could have put 1, 2, 3, 4 more cells in there. Guys, I'll bet that's why it's not testing at full capacity. It's missing some cells. Oh wow, those are long cylindrical cells, wow. All right, so let's take a look at what we pulled out here. So this entire battery pack was held in that case by these 2 pieces of foam on both sides. There was nothing other than this holding this battery pack in place. So not only is the BMS loose, the battery pack is kind of loose also. You know, think about normal operation, this is probably fine, but what if you dropped it? What if it's on a vehicle subject to vibration and you've got just these 2 pads holding this thing in place, nothing else. Taking a look at the side here, we see our temperature sensor is correctly affixed to the side of the cell. That's perfect. The balance leads are kind of coiled up here. I really don't like how that was done, but so these bus bars are spot welded into place here, and this material feels very thin. 0.21 millimeters, I mean that's pretty standard for nickel strip, I guess, not too bad. Considering this carries a 100 amp continuous rating, I mean, is that sufficient? I'm not sure. They have 2 large aluminum bus bars going down for the main negative and the main positive. This whole bus bar is like loose, so I suspect that is probably spot welded to that nickel strip as well. Alright, so here's a close look at the cell. It says HT, I don't know if that's a brand number or not. I'm going to try to Google some of this in a bit here, but I do see it says 48 watt hours. So these are 48 watt hour cells at 3.2 volts nominal voltage. That's standard for lithium iron phosphate. So let's calculate out what we actually have here. 48 divided by 3.2. So this is a 15 amp hour cell, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we've got times 6 in series is 90 amp hours. That's why this tested so low. This is a 90 amp hour battery. They're missing some of the cells. If they would have put those 4 more cells in there, this would have been a 105 amp hour battery, and it would have tested at the rated capacity. I want to tear apart this battery pack completely, but before I do that, I want to see if the low temperature charge protection actually works, because once it's torn apart, it's going to be a real pain to put back together. So I've got my bench power supply plugged in here. Turn up the current a little bit. Okay, we're charging at 1.2 amps there. And I usually use the computer duster to test the temperature protection on these batteries. Oh, it actually shut off. Holy crap. So based on what I'm seeing here, I wasn't expecting the low temperature charge protection to actually function. I pulled off the main positive bus bar and you can see how that was connected to the nickel strip. If we can get one out there. The only cylindrical cell I've ever held that was nearly this large were those original headway cells. This feels even bigger than those, though I don't have one to actually compare it to anymore. They do have an insulative disc on the top, which is good to see. It just prevents the nickel strip or anything else from rubbing through this insulation wrapper here, because on these cylindrical cells, not only is this negative, the entire casing of the battery is negative all the way up to and including the crimp. So you have your negative ring around the top here. I couldn't find any information online about these cells other than one Alibaba page where they were being sold, and they were being sold as secondhand or used. So, you know, I don't really know what more to say. I think this video and what we found inside speaks for itself. Let's take a super quick look at our BMS here before we go. It is very, very lightweight, very thin. The markings do indicate it is a 100 amp BMS. I assume one of these is charge and one is discharge. There is a part number here. It's YX-935A. There's not a whole lot else to see on here. I mean, this is literally as basic as it gets. So that little part there is a diode, and what's interesting is this BMS is supposed to have overcurrent protection. That's not something I tested or usually test for. But I don't see any resistors. Normally there are some shunting resistors here to measure the amount of current, but here's a quick look at the Amazon listing and what the marketing material depicts. It looks like it should be aluminum cased prismatic cells based on the marketing picture. Additionally, it says number of cells 1. I don't know, I guess that means number of batteries. But then it says resistance 1 ohms. I would sure as heck hope the battery does not have a resistance of 1 ohm, because that is a massive problem. Clearly, whoever created this listing has no idea what they are talking about. Now, it's funny because there are some videos attached to the Amazon listing here, and Brock Ashman says this is an awesome battery, perfect for solar hookups. How? How is this perfect for solar hookups? Now, I did notice too, the battery currently for sale says sold by Yijia Battery. When I purchased this back in March, it actually did say sold by KingBoss. So I'm not sure if this is a different company now marketing the same battery, or this is a trading partner or something like that. One more thing I have to add is if there hasn't already been enough. This is the box it came shipped in, right? It looks like a standard cardboard box, you know. And then I got wondering, well, gee, why is there a piece of cardboard taped on the side of the box? Oh, they purposely covered up the hazardous shipping label. So it actually has a box that is labeled lithium batteries. I mean, it doesn't have all the information on as far as I'm aware. So how creative, what a creative way. Creative's not the right word, but what a way to save money. On the positive side, I guess the low temperature charge protection works, so there is one positive to the whole thing. Now, there are hundreds of brands selling batteries like this on Amazon. Many of the brands seem like just made up gibberish to me. It seems like somebody just took a pile of letters, put them together, to get a brand name that was unique so they could post their listing on Amazon. This is not one of them. KingBoss kind of makes sense. It's at least a word. It's a legible word. I did find this deal on the Battery Finder website. If you haven't seen the Battery Finder website, it's pretty much dumping all of the LFP battery listings on Amazon. It allows you to sort them by price and filter by voltage, capacity, brand name, multi-packs. The problem is, looking at that page, you can easily find cheap batteries, but you don't know which one to trust. By the time I got this battery, it was already out of stock. Forget that it took me 4 months to make the video. By the time the battery was delivered, it was actually out of stock by that point. So there was no point, even if I would have published the video, people had already bought them at that point, but I suppose they are back in stock now by another seller. I don't know, you guys can draw your own conclusions. But anyway, I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on this battery, what you think of this video. Leave that down in the comment section. Hit that like button before you go, and thank you for watching.